Hello and welcome back to the final and sadly last episode of the Linguapop podcast. We are Shreya.
Hi.
And Marike, and you probably also already heard us from the previous episodes, German, French, English ones.
Spanish as well.
Spanish, Italian, I think.
Yeah.
Every episode, wow. So today we want to review all of our topics a little bit and conclude whether plurilingualism, in the context of pop culture especially, is really necessary or why we even need it or if we need it. So in general, we want to focus on the question, what role should pop culture and plurilingualism, this word, I'm sorry.
I mean, I can't spell it either, so
I can't say it. I'm sorry in advance. So we want to see what role it plays, while also considering the developments behind it. So to understand where it even comes from. And I mean, we talked about all the different examples from the different countries, but because we're talking about plurilingualism, we thought it just makes sense to review these topics as a whole to further understand the role of it. And also, as I already said, where it's actually comes from, but I think you know more about it than me.
Yeah, so as a group, we've kind of whittled it down to two main events in history. Obviously, there are many more. Plurilingualism is a very vast topic, but we've chosen to focus in on colonization and immigration and the effects of these two events on plurilingualism. So starting with colonization, colonization led to the eradication and endangerment of many indigenous languages through a combination of suppression, exclusion, and the creation of social and economic pressures to adopt the colonized language. In this case, most of it was probably English, Spanish, French. And this concept is kind of known as linguistic genocide or linguistic imperialism. So some mechanisms that we can relate to our examples are forced assimilation via education. For example, many colonial education systems became a primary tool for linguistic erasure. We can see this through the example of Quechua, which was spoken in our Spanish episode. The language now, there is a huge stigma around using it because it's seen as the less educational language, and this directly can be linked to the colonization of many countries in South America. The second example we saw is the imposition of official languages. Many colonial powers established their own languages like English and French and Spanish and Portuguese as the sole languages of administration, law, and government, which meant that it marginalized those who only spoke their own languages, their native tongues. And this example can actually be seen in many French ex-colonies, specifically in Africa, who now only use French as an administrative language, but in their own time still speak their own native languages. However, it does eradicate the space for indigenous languages within the sphere of business and internationalization. There's also this economic and social pressure I mentioned before. Access to jobs, trades, and social advancements is contingent upon fluency in languages such as English, which links to our previous episode about why English EMI has emerged and why it's such a big thing in educational systems. And then finally, also cultural and ideological domination, which is just a fancy way of saying racist ideologies that do exist, and that can exist from the use of indigenous languages. There is a square we learnt about in Italy, the Piazza Vittorio, where
orchestra, right?
The orchestra.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, of course. But yeah, there's a lot of political tension there because it's become a space where a lot of immigrants or migrants live, and because they'd like to speak, obviously, in their own home languages, it's led to a lot of far-right uprisings, shall we put it that way. And then going on to the second section of our ideas of where plurilingualism has emerged from is the idea of immigration. Immigration sort of has the opposite effects of colonization, promoting languages by introducing linguistic diversity, and the establishment of immigrant languages creates new mixed contact languages. So one example we can give you guys that does relate to our episodes is the development of new varieties. The interaction between different linguistic groups can lead to the developments of new ways of speaking, as we have established. Language is always evolving, that is beyond doubt. And this is perfectly seen in Germany with the use of Kiezdeutsch. Yeah. It has emerged from different linguistic groups interacting with each other. So to pass it on to Marika, we're now going to talk about kind of the more modern day approach to plurilingualism.
Yeah. And also about the big role pop culture plays for plurilingualism itself, because I think it's one of the strongest, or one of the biggest aspects of plurilingualism today.
Yeah.
And I think when you heard the previous episodes, you already know why it is so important. But just to maybe wrap it up again, I mean, it makes language feel young and relevant. You can just say it like this. For example, with the Kiezdeutsch, but also with the youth language in general. I mean, it reaches a young audience, and I think it does that better than traditional education because we are studying it, we are interested in it, so it's a different thing. But I think especially for younger people, it's just more engaging to do it with pop culture, with media, with Instagram, TikTok, and it also, I think, it also allows, as we saw already in the Spanish episode, minority languages to evolve creatively and not just be preserved, because we had this example of the Quechua rap, and we also heard a piece of it, right?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
And I think it just opens up space for like creativity and not just preservation. And furthermore, it also helps to shape maybe an identity, but also like a collective identity, because it carries moreover symbolic forms, not only the pop culture itself, but also about music, film, TikToks, or even memes. It reaches that young audience, and I think it creates like a huge space where people can also form identity or belonging. We talked about it with Kiezdeutsch. And for example, in like pop culture, we had the example of Türkisch für Anfänger, the German series that included Kiezdeutsch, and that was like a huge success for like a younger audience. But on the other hand, it also can help to develop languages and traditions, as we saw with Quechua and with this Quechua rap on TikTok. I'm sorry, I'm coming back to this example again and again. But I think this just like normalizes linguistic diversity, like, and also challenges the idea of only having the global languages represented in the media,
100%,
also like in the pop culture in general. So this just shows how important it is again and again. But then it brings us kind of to the question, why not simply multilingualism? Why do we need plurilingualism nowadays, and why especially that one? So what do you think?
I think plurilingualism really focuses on a promotion of all languages, not just, like you said, the mainstream languages, all languages. Yeah. There is no such thing as a Eurocentric focus or a very like Anglocentric focus. It's also promoting this idea of communication across all barriers, all boundaries. It doesn't matter if you're not fluent in a language, you're not native in a language, you can use that language, you still have some sort of wield over it. And I think it is a huge tie into identity, because nowadays, obviously there is that statistic that that monolingualism is the minority.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, their identity is intricately linked with plurilingualism, because that's how they communicate, that's how they've been, raised to speak and to think and to see the world, really. I mean, okay, just to play devil's advocate, not that any of us actually share this opinion, but some could argue that from a language puritan's kind of view, that plurilingualism does kind of pollute, maybe that's a controversial word to use, but pollute personal identity, because you are mixing one language with another. People also see standard languages to supposedly exist, that there's a specific way that these languages should be spoken, should be written, should be preserved. And so I suppose for them, plurilingualism can pose a kind of challenge to their idea of communication identity. And I think that should be counted for. Yeah. And
also, I think, like, of course, what you said, but furthermore, I think we also have to think about how realistic it is today. I mean, we know it's necessary and we know we need it, but most educational systems still use and also value these standard languages, standard varieties. And we need to view it kind of critically. At what point of this development are we? I think we need a few more steps to be at the point where we should be. and where plurilingualism is part of the everyday life, also educational life, because I don't think it's included as much in schools. And I think we touched on the debate over and over again, but in schools, I think it's seen very critically also like in politics.
Yes.
So on one hand, we really need it. And you also touched like upon that it just reflects the reality of the society we live in. So we should just name it as it is, you know?
Yeah, I think language is always going to be so political because of the past events we've mentioned, but also the fact that I think anyone could agree that your own self-identity is very much dependent on your language. The language you use to communicate, the language you use to express yourself, it does link to identity. So with plurilingualism, I think it allows that branch into, because, you know, if you speak different languages, you can't just box yourself into, well, oh, I speak English, so that is the language I speak, and I am only fluent and native in that language, so that is that. No, because you might also have branches into other languages that you might not speak fluently. But plurilingualism allows for that flexibility. It allows for that your identity to reach into certain aspects that it wouldn't be able to with things like multilingualism and monolingualism.
And if you have this ability, I mean, it's great. You should make use of it. And if you have this resource, just value it. And I think that's also what we kind of want to do with this podcast.
Yes, exactly.
To kind of spread awareness. Can you say it like this?
No, of course, yeah.
Because we just want to like show how much plurilingualism there actually is. Yeah. We also talked about our own experiences beforehand.
We were literally saying like before this module, we had no idea what plurilingualism was. And the fact is we're all plurilingualists without even knowing it. Like, I mean, me personally, I can speak, obviously English is my first language, and I cannot speak a word of Hindi or anything like that, but I can understand it perfectly fine. And then other languages like Punjabi, Urdu, they're all so similar to Hindi, so I can understand them pretty well. And then there's another Indian language, Malayalam. Cannot understand that, but I can pick up the general gist of what's going on. So while I don't speak any other languages, and then obviously there's French.
French. Completely forgot.
But while I don't speak any other language other than like English and kind of French, looking at that through a plurilingualist perspective, that's a lot of languages that I can now, you know,
so
wield
many
and
resources.
control. Yeah, exactly.
And also we're not talking about languages like in general, but we also talked about varieties. We also talked about youth language, about dialects. For example, where I come from, I speak like a certain dialect that is tied to my region because I live at the border. So you have like a mix of both languages. Yeah. And before taking the module, I didn't even think that this is like a resource for me. But now that I kind of got it, I think I can work with it because I just know that it kind of exists. And you value it also a little more. You also are more aware when you see, because you see plurilingualism like all around the university campus now. So I think if you have heard about it,
you know what it is.
Yeah,
it becomes a lot more evident. I mean, literally looking from like a multilingualist and plurilingualist perspective. I mean, from a multilingualist perspective, I probably speak one, maybe two languages. If that, you speak two languages. But from a plurilingualist perspective, we have so many more available to us, and so much more forms of communication that we always had. We just didn't realize there was a name for it, and there was like a category for it. Yeah,
true.
Okay, so thank you to all our listeners. Gosh, this is so sad. Like, it's our last time. Oh my God.
The last episode.
Well, thank you to all our listeners. We really appreciate you being here for all 6 episodes. A big thank you from myself, Marika, Gavin, Emily, Ella. But
especially Gavin for editing
honestly,
all these
Gavin.
episodes. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.